What is happening, guys? How are you doing? This is Rob of Rule of Two Review. Welcome back to the channel, and it's Q&A time. As I said on Twitter a couple of days ago, I wanted to do what I was calling a quarantine Q&A, which is really just a fancy way to say we're all stuck at home, I'm stuck at home, kind of bored, and I wanted to do another Q&A. These are always great ways for me to interact with you guys, respond to some of your direct questions, give you a shout out on a video. You guys always seem to enjoy them. I love doing these. I say that at the beginning of every Q&A, how much I love doing these. And there hasn't been any major news the last couple of days outside of the PlayStation 5 controller reveal, which I, of course, did discuss in a video anyway. And so I figured this was now a good time to go ahead and just kind of respond to some of your guys' questions. So, as per usual, if you want to be a part of these Q&As and other things like this in the future, you should most definitely follow me on Twitter, where I am extremely active. I'm always tweeting and talking about my thoughts about video game stuff and even other regular stuff and everything going on in the world, which is so super crazy and kind of scary, obviously, as well. So yeah, you should go ahead and give me a follow, and we can interact that way. So I would say, with that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump into the first question. So the first question on Twitter comes from actually a fellow YouTuber known as the Yellow Kazoo, at Yellow Kazoo on Twitter. So what is up? Thank you so much for asking me a question. And her first question is actually perfect because it relates to the whole us being stuck at home thing, right? We're all stuck at home, not sure what to do with our lives. We can't do a lot of the normal things that we would do, either for fun or even as far as like running errands and getting some stuff done. So I really liked where her first question went. So she says, have you stuck to a routine during quarantine? And what foods do you like to eat during it also? So, two interesting questions about being stuck. As far as routine, I'd say that the parts of my routine that have been disrupted by the quarantine would be going to the gym several times a week, probably 3 to 5 times a week. I'm going to the gym, sometimes in the morning, sometimes in the evening, before work or after work, just whatever I'm feeling. Not being able to do that is horrible, and so home exercise is definitely not the best. I'm doing the best I can. I do sit-ups and push-ups and pull-ups every day, but it doesn't feel the same to do it at home as it does in a gym. Doing a lot of walking and running, though, so I'm also trying to get outside now that the weather is nicer. The other part of my routine that's broken is music. Can't go to the studio, cannot play my drums. We do have a house, but the way our cul-de-sac is set up, it's just not convenient for having loud music or loud drums in our garage, and we don't have a basement, unfortunately, so it just doesn't make sense to do that. So we've had band rehearsal at a studio that we rent, about 20 or 30 minutes away from here, and I can't go to do that, and the band is not practicing. At least, we're not practicing at the space. We're finding other ways to do some things long distance, but it's not the same, and I can't access my drums regardless, so that stuff has been broken. So the only routine I'm still doing is I'm working from home, working about 50 hours a week right now from home, which I'm very fortunate, and, gaming on my free time, doing the best I can to exercise, and that's about it. As far as foods that I like to eat, kind of a lot of the same stuff. I try to eat healthy. I already eat pretty healthy anyway. So I'm snacking on stuff like trail mix and fruit when I can. I'm a big sucker for crackers, so I snack a lot on crackers and hummus. I eat a lot of crackers and chips and hummus and stuff. And then whatever else it is that my girlfriend decides to make for food, we're eating that as well. So that's pretty much my quarantine routine. Next question comes from actually another fellow YouTuber and somebody who I actually collaborated with on a video about 2 or 3 weeks ago. This comes from Parker Deal, at Parker Deal on Twitter, who's part of the awesome YouTube channel Fanatics4. So what's up, Parker? Thank you for another question. He says, sup, Rob. If Starfox were to return, what would be the form factor you'd like to see embraced? On-rail shooter, dogfighting, adventure, other, and best of luck fighting the boredom. Thanks so much, man. You too. I hope we can all fight boredom. As far as Starfox, man, I want Starfox to come back. And I've said for a while, I think there's a good chance we will see a Starfox game on the Switch. I sure hope Nintendo doesn't leave it in the dust on this console. And, there's 2 different ways I would like to see it come back. One would be something akin to what Star Fox Assault was. The other would be, as controversial as it is, something more like Star Fox Adventure, which you even reference here. Because in your question, you mentioned an on-rail shooter or dogfighting. What's great about Starfox Assault, for anyone who played it, you already know this, is it's a great mix of all the different aspects of Star Fox. You have the on-rail shooter classic sections, you've got a lot of on-foot kind of missions and multiplayer where you're dogfighting, and some people are on the ground, some people are in a landmaster, some people are in an R-Wing, and you're all on the same battlefield doing all that stuff. And even some of the single-player campaign featured on-foot missions as well. And it was just a great kind of mishmash of all the different Star Fox styles. And it wasn't, like, amazing, but it was really, really good. And I think that they could do another Star Fox game that way, and I would be really excited. But, like I said, I also love Star Fox Adventure, and I think it would be so cool, even though it would be freaking impossible. Nintendo would never do this, unfortunately. I would love to see either another game in that style, or even just a straight-up sequel that still is an adventure on-foot game, and they would probably need to improve a lot of things about it, such as maybe more access to your R-Wing and more of a reason to do R-Wing, space, and flying combat. I think they would need to improve and add a lot of that. But everything else about Star Fox Adventures, everything about discovering the worlds and puzzle solving and just, you know, just being Fox on foot, running around, fighting, it was awesome. I think that game is so underrated and underappreciated. So I would welcome either, you know, a sequel to Assault or a sequel to Adventures. Next question comes from Hoos of the Black Eagles at the Hoos85. What's up, buddy? I'm sure I've answered your questions in the past. He or she asks me, do you think Nintendo is using this bizarre time to lengthen the Switch's life cycle by pushing back games to 2021 that may have been released in 2020? And, you know, interesting question. There's another question later that's a little bit similar to this too, but I still wanted to answer both of them because of their differences. So in general, if we were to think of maybe what Nintendo was already planning on releasing this year, are they maybe pushing those back and then also lengthening the amount of time that the Switch would be Nintendo's front-facing console? And to that, is it possible? Yeah, I'd say it's possible. But I don't really think that that's what Nintendo's doing. I think that Nintendo's probably already had a plan to release their next machine sometime in the next couple of years. You know, my long-running theory, you guys have heard me say this, is 2022 or 2023. Those have been the years that I've been guessing, just purely speculation on my part, that Nintendo might move on to their next generation console, the successor to the Switch, whether it's Switch 2 or whether it's something different, whether it's another hybrid or whether it's a traditional home console. Whatever that is, you know, not a Switch Pro, not an upgrade to the regular model, but like a successor. I feel like 2022 or 23 is the ideal year. And so, you know, that's, what, 2 to 3 years away from right now. But this year, everything's being put on hold. Nintendo's been very silent. They have so little that they're releasing in 2020 that we know about currently. Even though there are rumors about the Mario stuff, that still doesn't truly fill out 2020 with new Nintendo experiences. The only game they've given us is Animal Crossing, and we don't know of any other Nintendo games this year. No More Heroes and Bravely Default are great third-party exclusive titles, but they're not Nintendo titles. And even with those, it's still a barren year. And so maybe Nintendo, because of the health situation, decided to delay a lot of their 2020 slate, and by doing that, I guess, you know, the question is, would their next console take even another year to come out? And the reason I think probably not is just because if that window is correct of 22 and 23, I feel like it's far away enough that the delay effects of 2020 won't really be felt, if any of that makes sense. I don't know if this is maybe getting confusing or not, the way I'm talking about it. I just feel like, you know, long story short, the release of their next console is probably too far off to be affected by what's happening this year. I mean, if it's closer than we're thinking, then maybe there's something to the question, and I can see what you're saying. But I don't think any of us expect it before 2022 or 23. I mean, some people think that the Switch is going to be going for 10 years. So what, we're not going to see the next console till 2027? I don't believe that at all, but some people certainly do. So I guess to answer this question, it just depends on when you guess Nintendo's going to move on from the Switch to their next thing. So the earlier you think it might be, the higher chance that they're going to lengthen the life because of 2020. But I put it in 22 or 23, so I don't know. I think we're probably fine. Next question comes to us from Callisto at Callisto4081. And they say, "Hi Rob, I hope you are doing okay in this weird time we're in." I certainly am, thank you so much. So I've been wondering if there's a Skyward Sword remaster actually on the way. Do you think it would be developed internally by Nintendo or by another studio such as Tantalus or Grezzo? I mean, we could assume that it'll be another studio, but since the controls may be very complicated to bring to the Switch, maybe they'd even plan more classic control options, who knows? I thought maybe Nintendo would want to handle this themselves. What's your opinion about that? Great question, Callisto, and I'm going to be real with you. You actually, in both of your tweets here, you nail pretty much exactly how I feel about it both times. So as far as a different studio that might develop a Skyward Sword port, which, man, I really think it may happen before we're all dead, you guys. I really think eventually Nintendo is going to do that with that game. One of the studios you mentioned is Tantalus. And that's probably, if they were going to get another port studio to do it, that's probably the studio I think that they would trust with it. Because they've already worked with them once on a Zelda game, which of course was Twilight Princess. I don't know if they also did Wind Waker. I don't think they did, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. I know, bare minimum, they did Twilight Princess. And they did a great job with that, all things considered. You mentioned Grezzo could be a good option. There's also like Virtuous Studios or Panic Button. I don't really see those studios being as likely of an option, but you never know. Nintendo may do that. Maybe even Nintendo just gets one of the other developers they've worked with to do it, like Mercury Steam, for example. I think Mercury Steam working on Zelda could actually be really great. Would they do a port or a new game? Who knows, but I don't know. It's an option that I kind of think of. But then you also mention, if because of the nature of what it would take to port this game, if Nintendo would opt to just do it themselves and have one of their internal Zelda teams just do the port without a third-party studio. And I truly believe that might be the most likely option if they're going to do it. Skyward Sword would take some very crafty reworking to make work on any console that isn't the Wii/Wii U and that doesn't use the exact Wii Remote and Nunchuck. The Joy-Cons we all talk about, maybe they could get a lot of that Motion Plus stuff down, and I think that there's probably enough technology there to make it happen. But we all know it might not be as ideal as using an actual Wii Remote and Nunchuck, right? That's kind of the general consensus. So I think that because they might have to get so nitty-gritty with making that work, that they're like, you know, we need to put our best Zelda Nintendo people on this game. We like you, Tantalus, or Mercury Steam, or Virtuous, whatever. We like you guys, but you're not the team for this. Nintendo is the team for this. And, you know, because I think that Skyward Sword will eventually make it off of the Wii onto another platform, I think that we might see Nintendo take care of it. Okay, next question comes to us from Windfish at Fishwind on Twitter. And we finally have a Metroid question, by the way. This is our first Metroid question. They ask me, what is your pitch for the best 2D Metroid game to continue the series? In other words, what do you hope/dream the plot of Metroid 5 will be? Well, I have already answered this before in live streams and stuff, but I always like talking about it and having a reason to dive deeper into it. So, my ideal plot for a Metroid 5, or I guess the way you say it is my pitch for the best 2D Metroid game to continue the series. Well, obviously, that would be a game that takes place after Metroid Fusion, because, as a reminder for those who don't know, the furthest in the timeline any Metroid game has ever gone is Metroid Fusion. That's the end of Samus's story that we've seen. Even though the game came out, 18 years ago, we have not had a game that takes place after that point. Her battle with the SAX is the last thing we've seen canonically from Samus and Metroid. And so, obviously, the best game to continue the series is a game that takes place after that. Probably a Metroid 5. Now, does that need to be a direct sequel to Fusion? And my answer is no, it doesn't need to be. And that might sound weird because you would think, well, obviously a Metroid 5 would be a sequel to Fusion because Metroid Fusion was Metroid 4. And I think that in a sense that's right. But what I'm getting at is that I don't need the story to continue, specifically Samus and the SAX gene and the fusion suit and everything that she deals with there. She doesn't even necessarily need to be so focused on Adam Malkovich anymore, because remember, that's a huge part of Samus's journey in Metroid Fusion, before they went back in time and told us that story in Metroid Other M, which is a prequel to Fusion. And so, I don't necessarily need that. I don't need it to be a sequel to Fusion, I just need it to be a sequel to the Metroid games. So a completely new adventure, unrelated to the SAX and the Fusion storyline, could still be a Metroid 5. You know, they could call it Metroid Revengeance, Metroid The Worst Day Ever, Metroid Dread. You know, even that, of course, could be what Metroid 5 is. And then, to get more technical, you ask about my dream plot. I've said this before. I want Samus to investigate the origin of the Chozo. The Chozo is an alien race, hugely important to Samus and her upbringing when her parents died when she was a young girl, and they raised her, and they were a huge part to the original Metroid Prime game. And there's a lot of great unexplored lore and ideas there, both the lore of the Chozo and Samus's relationship to them and how they're so important to her and what makes her who she is. And I just think that the series is rife for exploring that idea. And so whether that happens in a Prime 4 or a different console 3D game or the next 2D game that's a sequel to Fusion, whatever it is, I would like eventually to see Samus do that. And I think a great way to do it would be in a Metroid 5. Next question comes from Dylan Luna at LunaTunes25. And Dylan asks me, a higher up in Nintendo agrees to give you a tour of their headquarters. Who do you choose to give you the tour? Well, this is a fun question. I like this one. I wish this was a couple years ago because obviously Reggie would be the guy who I'd want to show me around. But in a world here and now where there's no Reggie, and obviously we also have no Iwata, who would have been another one of my choices. If we go on right here and now, it's not a surprise. I would like it to be Miyamoto. I know that there is a language barrier there. He speaks a little bit of English, but it's not the best, you know. So maybe I should say Miyamoto and Bill Trinen. Okay, so I'd like Bill Trinen to be there as both part of the tour guide, you know, like the Nintendo specialists, him and Miyamoto, but also, you know, to be an interpreter. So I could talk to Miyamoto about, you know, Zelda and Metroid and just everything Nintendo and his whole crazy history, because he has such a great history with Nintendo and just in the gaming space, you know. So not a fancy surprising answer, but it would be Miyamoto with a cameo from Bill Trinen. Next question comes to us from Traykov540 at Traykov540. And Traykov says, when do you think Call of Duty will come to the Switch? Well, I like this question too because I've talked about this pretty much since the Switch was like released. I thought very early on in the Switch's life, I thought for sure we're getting Call of Duty soon. This thing is a hit. This thing is powerful and very capable. Call of Duty is a huge series. Why isn't Activision going to want to, you know, rake in every possible dollar and cent they can? Of course, throw it on the Switch. They put 2 really solid ports of Call of Duty games on the Wii U, and they put like 2 or 3, I think 3, onto the Wii. And they did a great job making, you know, games that focused on the features of the Wii and the Wii U, and they were all great. So why wouldn't they do it on the mega successful Switch that could actually run a very comparable Call of Duty game to the competitors? And we haven't seen it. Like, what the hell are you doing, Activision? Why haven't you put Call of Duty on the Switch? And so my answer to your question of when I think it's going to happen, I truly feel that this next Call of Duty, this year's 2020's Call of Duty, which we've yet to see, by the way, I think this is the last chance. And maybe Call of Duty this year gets delayed because of what's happening, and so that's fine. So I just mean the very next Call of Duty. Whenever we finally see the next one revealed, if it's Black Ops 5, if it's some new game, if it's Modern Warfare 4, whatever they do with that next game, the next Call of Duty to release, I think is the best shot we have. If Activision doesn't finally take a bite out of the Switch audience and decide to put their game on this console this time, I just don't see them doing it. I don't think that they're going to be interested. I don't think that there's going to be enough time on the Switch to make an impact. There's, you know, 55, 60 million Switches out there. It's got more units out there than the damned Xbox. And they always put it on the Xbox. Why would you not put it on the frickin' Switch where you know it's going to sell very, very well? It's crazy to me. So, I don't know. That's my thinking. As far as I see it, it's 2020 or bust. And the next question comes from Samus Prime at Samus Prime on Twitter. And Samus Prime asks me, with this lockdown pushing back recent releases like The Last of Us 2, do you think games currently in development, i.e. Metroid Prime 4, will take even longer to release? If so, when do you think we will see the game release? So, really good question, and I've seen this come up quite a few times on comments in my videos and my last couple of live streams. People keep asking me basically this exact thing. Do I think the health situation and the delays the industry is seeing is going to affect Metroid Prime 4 specifically? And I will say, for Metroid Prime 4, no, I don't. You do also ask about random games in development, and I think that yes, obviously, probably many games currently in development could be affected by Metroid Prime 4, could be affected by the delays in what's happening. But for me, I don't see Metroid Prime 4 as one of those right now. Now, the reason I don't think Metroid Prime 4 is one of those games is solely because I still just believe Metroid Prime 4, sadly, is so far off. I don't know that if the development stage it's in is within the window to be affected by what's happening by this health situation, if that makes sense. I kind of think that its release date is so far away, which is just me guessing, of course. It is only a theory, but I think that it might be so far away that there's no reason to think that slowing down development now is going to have an adverse impact on the game. I'm sure that they've got quite a few people who are able to work from home, wherever this is being developed. Well, I mean, wherever. It's obviously in Texas where Retro Studio is, but they might also have some teams in other locations, maybe in Europe, maybe, at home in Japan, as well as the main studio in Texas, or the main team in Texas, I should say. I think that a lot of people can probably do a lot of the work that they're currently doing from home. And with any luck, if the next, 4 to 8 or 9 months, people start going back to work into offices and things open up, maybe around the end of the year, I bet that they will not have really lost a whole lot of time on that game specifically, just because I don't think the game is right around the corner like a lot of people probably thought it was. In fact, I know people thought the game might be coming out very soon, and I just haven't thought that that's the case. Once the delay happened in 2019, I was like, this game is 2022. And so with the game, in my opinion, probably being 2 years off or more, I just don't see a lot of the industry delays happening now as something that would affect the release date for Metroid Prime 4. Last question of the day is, of course, even another Metroid question. This comes from Larry V at HeroStorm96. And Larry asks me, "Hey Rob, I want to know your take on the art style for the next upcoming 2D Metroid game. Would you prefer the similar CGI of Metroid Samus Returns? When you say CGI, I think you maybe just mean the polygonal graphic style, the graphic style of Samus Returns. Would you prefer the similar graphics to Metroid Samus Returns, or a more artistic approach like the Ori games, or would you prefer a classic sprite-based game?" And he goes on to share this, what seems to be a really dope-looking fan art of a 2D Metroid game that is just gorgeous to me. Absolutely phenomenal. And I'll be real with you guys, honestly, what I would prefer would be a very modern sprite-based graphic style, very similar to this picture. Something that you could get so much depth and so much detail and personality and life out of, that this fan art here absolutely screams to me. It is so fantastic. I do not know who did it. Whatever this SW in the corner is here, mad props to you. This is gorgeous. I love this. Here's the thing. All of the options you mentioned, I would be very open to. I love Samus Returns as a game. I loved the art style and the graphic style in that. So a much more modern, more graphically capable version of that style, built from the ground up for the Switch, would probably be amazing and beautiful, and I would very much welcome it. You mentioned the Ori games, and I think that the two Ori games are two of the best looking, best sounding, best playing games I've ever played. Seriously. Like, the first one was like almost a 10 for me, and the second one, which I only completed recently, just came out, is not too far behind it. I think they're both spectacular. I love the visual style. And a Metroid game in that style could be amazing. But, call me an old fuddy-duddy because I am an older gamer. I have such nostalgic appreciation of the old sprite-based graphics and that style that I would like to see them do something like that. But again, I want it to be something that would be more like a 32-bit style. I don't want it to be like sprite-based like a 16-bit, even though I love that style. I want it to be more modern. So if we could picture something that would have come out on like, using sprite-based graphics, but like on the PlayStation 1 or the Saturn or the N64 at that time, 32, 64-bit quality sprite-based stuff, again like this fan art, that gets me the most excited. I think that seeing Nintendo develop a game in that art style again in any franchise would be very exciting. I've actually wanted something similar in the Mario franchise as well. And so if they were to do something like that and make it a Metroid game, oh my god, you guys. I don't know. Again, any one of these would make me excited. I'm very excited to see what Nintendo does with 2D Metroid again, because I also think they nailed it with Samus Returns. So there's no wrong answer, but if I could pick, man, give me that sprite-based all day, every day. And with that, this would be a wrap. That's going to be today's Q&A for all of us who are just stuck at home, myself included. It's been really fun. You know, I'm working from home, and I'm working even more from home than I normally did in the office. My normal schedule is split 50-50 home office. Now I'm full-time, and I'm actually working more and doing some overtime. But it's great because it's so much easier for me to, before or after work, get videos kind of recorded and edited much more frequently than I could before. So I'm really kind of enjoying that. Even though I would much rather this thing not be a problem and all of us to be back at work and back in school and life to be normal again and people's health to not be at risk. I'm not saying I prefer what's happening, but a positive byproduct, I just have to say, is that, as far as myself being a part-time YouTuber who has a full-time career but also has this channel. So tell me what you think about my answers to today's questions. Remember to follow me on Twitter if you want to be a part of these in the future or just interact with me in general. And hopefully you guys enjoyed, and that makes this a wrap. Thanks, of course, as always, for tuning in, guys. This is Rob of Rule of Two Review, and I will catch you next time on another video.